Every system takes in some kind of input and produces an output. The shape of that relationship determines everything. When the output responds more strongly to upward shocks than to downward shocks of the same size, the system has a convex response. This is a geometric property of the map, not a probabilistic one. Three dynamical regimes exist depending on the curvature of the response. A concave response loses more from a downward shock than it gains from an upward shock. A linear response gains and loses equally. Variance has no effect. A convex response gains more from upward shocks than it loses from downward shocks. Only the third regime is antifragile, and only under specific conditions. Convexity is a local property. It describes what happens near a given point, but absorbing barriers are global constraints. A sufficiently large downward shock can cross the barrier. Once crossed, the system does not return. The expected gain from the convex upside becomes irrelevant. When the response is convex, the actual expected output exceeds what you would get by plugging in the average input. The size of that gap scales with how spread out the inputs are. More spread means a larger gap. This is the formal driver of antifragility, and it disappears entirely when variation is suppressed. Convexity fails as a model in three distinct ways. First, the downside reaches an absorbing boundary. The system is eliminated before the convex gain can be collected. Second, the tail of the distribution is cut off. The large upward shocks that would generate the gain simply never occur. Third, the response is convex only in a limited range. Beyond that range, it curves the other way, and large shocks become harmful. Antifragility describes the shape of a payoff. It says nothing about whether the system will survive long enough to collect that payoff. Convex gains without a bounded downside can amplify losses in the wrong regime. The model breaks when the absorbing barrier is within reach. That is where convexity stops being a property and becomes a hazard.